ahead and get started here in just a moment. Okay, good morning and welcome to today's webinar. We've got a great one for you, Filling Sales Pipelines and Keeping Them Full. I'm Brian Pettihill, Chairman of the IIAB Cal Emerging Leaders Committee. With me today is Ira Kasdan, Insurance and Banking Practice Leader of the Impax Corporation. Ira Kasdan, for more than 25 years, has been a successful sales executive with extensive training and experience to help leading businesses increase effective prospecting activity, differentiate themselves by how they sell, and reduce time to full productivity for new hires. Over the past few years, Ira has worked with more than 35 independent agencies to obtain double-digit growth in sales. For today's webinar, we have muted all your phones to eliminate background noise. However, you can ask any questions that you might have throughout the webinar in writing through the right-hand navigation area of the GoToMeetings. All your questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation. However, Ira will be asking some questions throughout the presentation, so if you have some answers to his questions, go ahead and type those in. So with Ira, take it away.
Great. Well, first of all, everyone, I appreciate you taking time to join us for today's webinar. This topic about how to fill sales pipelines and keep them full so you're consistently in front of more prospects. You know, this is the lifeblood of every agency, and agencies really, tend to struggle with this. So one of the things is, so I'm glad we're getting together to talk about some of the barriers and how we can overcome these. What I wanted to do is start by getting everybody thinking about the question on the screen. What are the greatest barriers to an effective prospecting or cold calling effort, when you're reaching out to business or commercial prospects? And depending on where you sit in your respective organizations, I'd like you to think about the barriers you might face as a producer, or the barriers that agency principals, agency heads, the barriers that you face from that perspective, keeping an ongoing prospecting and cold calling effort for your agency overall. So everybody at least think about what the top 3, 4, or 5 of those barriers might be. If you want to enter them in the chat window, please do so. We'll give you just a moment to do that. What I would say is, having worked with so many different agencies, here are some of the barriers that I hear about most often. And first of all, starting with producers, is just reaching a live human being voice to voice on the phone. They say that in today's world, when we try and talk to people by telephone, about 80% of the time we end up interacting with voicemail. So just getting to a live human being to ask for an appointment. Certainly call screeners can frequently be gatekeepers, and getting past those to the people you want to talk to can be a challenge. So many of the organizations you're calling are not just hearing from you as a producer, but they're hearing from many, many, many of your competitors on a regular basis. So many of them are frustrated and tired from being hammered on all the time by so many calls. When the people you're calling get so many calls, there's a question of how do you sound different? How do you, when you have only moments to make an impression, how do you separate yourself from those many other calls they get? I think also, if producers are honest, there's the fear that I'm going to spend all this time and I'm not going to get a lot of appointments frequently. The conversion ratios of appointments to people reached aren't that good. There's the fear of rejection we all can have. It's also kind of lonely work. And frankly, there's a lot of other things that every producer can do to fill their day, many of which seem like they might be more pleasant than making a prospecting or a cold call. When we talk to agency heads, agency owners, agency principals about the barriers to keeping a prospecting effort, a proactive prospecting effort going, some of the things they talk about are, again, just getting producers to block the time and make it a priority. How do you create some accountability? Everybody has good intentions. Nobody is thinking, I don't want to talk to prospects. But how do you create accountability to make sure it really happens? What do you track? What do you measure? So many organizations track a calling effort by tracking dials. And if the hardest part of a prospecting effort, a cold calling effort, is just reaching people voice to voice, then the dials numbers aren't necessarily meaningful because you can't make an appointment with a dial. So that the tracking and measuring, giving people effective tools and methods, so that as opposed to just saying, go ahead and get some appointments, you're really giving them some guidance. And then additionally, coaching. One of the things that is striking to me is when you ask agency heads, when you ask people in sales management roles in agencies about if they've ever actually listened to their producers making calls to get an appointment, or maybe when was the last time they actually listened to producers making calls, frequently we find that they've never done any actual listening to how these calls are taking place or what they sound like. And as a result, it's hard to give people very valid feedback on how they can improve. And I think maybe the last one is that when agencies want producers to do outbound calling in a proactive way, so often the producers view it as a pretty painful experience. And are there any ways to make it more engaging? So if those are some of the problems we're trying to solve, what are we going to do about it? The next thing I wanted to ask, just to set the scene and get you thinking ahead, is that as a as a producer who's making the calls, or as an agency owner or principal who has producers making the calls, how many meetings should you expect to get from every 100 people that you reach? And I think it's interesting, if I were going to share back what I've heard from the agencies I work with, is that frequently when we first get involved with them, they would say if they're in a cold calling or just reaching out to prospects, their conversion ratio of appointments to people reached is often pretty low. 1 in 10 is probably the average, but we hear numbers as low as 1 in 20. Sometimes we hear people that might say they do a little bit better, but generally the results are pretty low. What I wanted to show you are some results from what we call prospecting day events that our organization runs frequently with many of our clients. And these are dates, the top two, May the 8th, so earlier this month, and then March of this year, shows you the number of producers who participated in a full day, 8:30 to 4:30 prospecting event, the number of people that they actually reached to ask for an appointment, to ask for a meeting, the number of meetings they actually secured, and then the conversion ratio. So the percentage of those people reached where it actually resulted in an appointment. And I just want you to see how how high those conversion ratios are. And in fact, we've been doing this calling approach that I'll be talking with you about in the rest of our webinar today. We've been running events using this approach for over 8 years. And when people follow our method, the conversion ratio of appointments compared to people reached is always at least 1 in 4 or 25% or better, and frequently, as you can see from the chart, sometimes much better. Another thing that I wanted to call out, my slide is not advancing. Oh, there we go. Another thing I wanted to call out in terms of actual results is that every one of the agencies that we've worked with across the country, when they've done one of these prospecting day events that we're going to talk with you about, they have every time scheduled more meetings in a single day than they have in the previous 90 days, and sometimes in the previous 6 months or even longer. We do have a number of cases where doing prospecting days once a quarter for an entire sales team, we've had clients who say they can attribute 10% of their new business goal for the year to just results that came out of 3 identified prospecting days earlier in the year. And then one of my large clients, one of their executives sold the largest account of his 20-plus year career as a producer. He sold his largest account to, the largest case of his career, to an organization he first reached out to on a prospecting day, though it took about 12 months before that business actually was in the door. So anyhow, I just wanted to say that the prize is great. There's some great results that can be had if you follow this roadmap for success. So the high-level path we're going to talk to you about following three main parts. First of all, be unconventional. Second of all, be ready, prepare. And then finally, as I've already mentioned, make it an event. And I'll talk a little bit more about what we mean by that. Let's talk first about the idea of being unconventional. In our last webinar, we talked about the value of running the race differently. When you think about who to call, who are you asking for when you're doing prospecting, the conventional wisdom is to reach out to the usual suspects, the owner of the business, the CFO or VP of finance, the controller on the benefits side, maybe the human resources VP or director or whoever heads that HR function. You know, the thing that I would mention is those people get all of the calls. They're the ones who are hammered on all the time. They're the ones who are are hardest to reach, and they're the ones who have the highest level of sales resistance because they're being called all the time by all of your competitors. So a different strategy might be this. First of all, to leverage warmer connections. What I mean is that many producers have connections through their personal or professional network with people in organizations who could be terrific accounts, but they never bother calling on those people because they say, well, the person isn't in a position or role where they decide, where they make the benefits decision or they make the P&C decision, so they don't bother calling on them. But we're going to suggest if you use a different strategy, all you're looking for is a way inside the organization to broaden and deepen your understanding of the organization, maybe get referred up the line. The next part of this different strategy on who to call is to do it, in a different pecking order. Most selling approaches and calling approaches say call top down. Again, the more senior people are the ones who get the most calls and are the most difficult to reach. What we suggest is you might try and start with lower levels, right? There's more people at the lower levels. They get fewer of the calls. Sales resistance is lower. A lot of times, some people at lower levels might actually be complimented that somebody's interested in what they think and what they have to say. So many of us, as producers or salespeople, when we call on an organization, what we want to do is we want to get to people very close to the buying decision. Again, like those listed under conventional wisdom, the CFO, the HR person, the controller. One of the challenges with that strategy is very often it is those same people who recommended the incumbent who's already has the relationship. And so when we're asking for an appointment with that person, sometimes they immediately get defensive because if we show them a better way, if you show them a better way representing your agency, it may cause them to feel, gosh, I'm going to look bad if the owner of the company realizes we could have been doing something different and better all the time. So a different strategy might be to think about who are the users who are impacted by your solutions when they're actually in place. And some people on the P&C side might be like the safety person, the head of the safety committee, the safety manager. It might be an operations person, and that would be true for P&C or benefits. If they're a multi-location organization, if you think about it, the location manager has a P&L. They're getting hit by the insurance costs, the risk costs. They're getting hit by the HR costs, but they probably didn't make that benefits or P&C decision. They might be a great stakeholder in giving you input and becoming a coach to help you improve their situation. And then one other thing I just mentioned is if you can't reach anybody else to get inside, why don't you try, if none of the traditional buyers or influencers will take your call, try calling a pure prospect company and just say, I'd like to talk to somebody in sales. Because you know what? In the vast majority of cases, somebody is going to take your call, and you'll at least get to talk to a live person. The second part of being unconventional is how to position your agency. Most organizations, most agencies, most producers, when they're making prospecting calls, are talking about, I want to come and talk to you about your insurance. I want to come and talk to you about your benefits. They make the call about the products or services or solution they're representing. And the thing I'd ask you to think about is human nature. As people, as human beings, the moment I tell you what I'm selling, your knee-jerk reaction, every one of you, is to say, I need it, I don't, I'm interested, I'm not. That's why the different strategy we talk about is talk about the results that you help businesses achieve. People may not be interested in insurance or benefits, but if you say something like, we help other companies in your industry cut their costs and be more competitive in this really difficult economy, nobody's going to say to you honestly, geez, our costs are too low, we're already more competitive. If you say that we help organizations like yours provide a safer work environment and reduce accidents and injuries, nobody's honestly going to come back and say, gosh, we want to be the accident and injury leader in our industry. So position your agency around results, not products and services, because everybody wants results, and it helps you to sidestep that initial onslaught of objections. Additionally, what to ask for. The conventional wisdom is asking for a traditional sales appointment, a chance to come in and talk about your agency. The different strategy is an opportunity to learn about the customer's business. Look, the reason I'm calling today is I've done some homework on your business, and from what I've learned on my own, wow, you look like so many others in your industry who we're helping to cut their costs and be more competitive in this really difficult economy, which is why I'm eager to update my understanding and deepen my understanding of your business to see if we might be able to bring similar value for you. So it's an opportunity to learn about them, to confirm your understanding of their business or situation, or to expand it, to broaden it, to deepen it, or even with an existing client to update it. So that's a little bit about what to ask for. We talked about that one of the other milestones, or one of the other key parts of this roadmap to success is to prepare. And what might we prepare? If you're going to do this prospecting approach, you want to come into a prospecting period with a lot of people to call, a lot of organizations. So both the companies on the list you want to call and the individuals, the names and titles of the people you want to reach out to, or at least the roles that you want to call if you don't have specific names. One of the things that I mentioned already a couple of times is we find that the hardest part of prospecting and cold calling in today's environment is simply to reach a live human being on the phone. So what we're going to suggest is that every time you as a producer pick up the phone to make a call and ask for an individual or a position, you want to ask for the safety manager, you want to ask for the operations manager. Let's say that that person isn't in. We suggest that before you pick up the phone that you have a fallback position who you'll zero out to the operator of the switchboard. You'd ask, is your safety manager, is your operations manager in today? Okay, are they going to be in at all? Find out if they're going to be back, and maybe when's the best time to reach them. While I have you on the phone, by the way, is your location manager in? Is your general manager in? Is your IT manager in? So ask for another position or role or person before you get off the phone. Statistically, it's going to double your chances of reaching somebody on every call. And as you reach more people, your numbers get better. As we've shown you, the conversion ratio using this approach is very good. One of the things we encourage very strongly is for people to use call scripts, how they ask for the meeting, and scripts of how they might even respond to the objections and questions you get when you're asking for an appointment. Now, when I talk to producers and the agencies we work with about using a script, the initial reaction is, well, I don't like using a script because I don't want to sound scripted. What I've done is listen to hundreds and hundreds of producers and other salespeople call for these appointments, and those who wing it, who don't follow a script, they're right, they don't sound scripted. What they sound is confused, disoriented, unclear. I know what they want, and it's hard for me to figure it out. And so the idea is people are going to be better in asking for the meeting if they're practiced and well-rehearsed and follow an outline or a script, and the same is true with responding to the objections and questions they get. Lastly, we say before you pick up the phone to call a company, make sure that you know a little bit about what they do and pick out a couple of specifics in the publicly available data about that organization, because even if a person is resistant to talking to you, if you say, geez, before I let you go, I noticed on your website that you just opened this new location, or you just launched this new product, what can you tell me about that? If it's specific and it's on target and it's about them and the person you're talking to knows anything about it, human nature is it's going to be very difficult for them not to answer, and then the conversation has begun. The more you get them to talk, the more likely you can secure that appointment or get a lot of value out of even that initial phone call. I did want to show people, we say that I have a call opening script. The model we suggest people use is a three-part model: purpose, benefit, request. So purpose, why am I calling you? Benefit, why would you care? What's in it for you in listening to what I want? And then request, which if you're asking for this kind of information gathering appointment that we call a research meeting, it's always just asking, I'd like to get 20 or 30 minutes on the telephone or in person to ask a few questions, broaden, deepen, and update my understanding of your business. I also talked about the idea of being prepared for any objections or questions you might get. We always strongly encourage what we call the read model of dealing with objections. When an objection comes up, you restate it, play it back, or paraphrase it so that the person knows you're listening. The key step that most people miss then is to explore, to ask an open question about it that gets the person talking at the other end of the phone, gives you more information to work with, helps you understand what they mean by the objection, and then the way you pivot and turn the conversation around. It's a bit of an old technique, but it still works well today. We call it feel, felt, found. Gosh, I understand how you feel. You know, so many of my best clients today, best accounts today, felt that way when I first talked to them, but what they found was, and then you direct them back to the requested action, which in the case of asking for an initial appointment is just a chance to, all I'm looking for is to get that 20 minutes on your calendar to ask a few questions. You know, moving towards wrapping up our session today, the final piece or stop on our path to success is to make it an event. One of the great ways to really build this into the culture of your agency is to periodically, at a minimum of once a quarter, have all the producers in your organization, every member of your sales team, block the full day. We suggest from 8:30 in the morning to 4:30 in the afternoon, just to go ahead, to come into the day prepared with a good prospect list, well rehearsed with what you're going to say to ask for appointments and responses to objections. And as a team, everybody's calling all day just to try and schedule these initial meetings to get inside new prospect organizations. Having a whole team involved makes it a lot less lonely. One of the things that you can do then is share successes. Every time somebody books an appointment, you can have them go ahead and send a message to everybody else, all their peers, their colleagues who are participating, to let them know that they've just had a success. So it's great to see these messages fly back and forth. It shows that people aren't alone. It builds a lot of energy and momentum and creates a little bit of friendly competition. We also suggest you create accountability, and the way you do that is by having maybe a midday meeting or call where everybody reports the results for the morning, and then you can do that again at the end of the day where everybody reports the results for the afternoon. So there's no place to hide. Everybody has to really perform, and we say repeat it regularly. Most of our best clients do this kind of what we call a prospecting day event at least one day a quarter. You know, it's only 4 days a year, or many of them do it even more often, every other month or even monthly or even sometimes weekly for their unvalidated and new producers. It's a great way to have some fun, to build some energy, and people actually say these events are fun as well as highly productive. Lastly, again, we've gone through it kind of quickly today. We've got one more webinar in our series before InsureFest coming up. That next one is going to be about being more persuasive, and it's a guide to everyone who needs to convince other people to follow your recommendations or take action on something you want them to act on. I hope you'll join us for that webinar early in August. And then lastly, I really hope I'll have a chance, if you found any value in today's discussion and in our prior webinar, I'd appreciate a chance to get to meet you in person at InsureFest in October. So that's all I've got. Brian, I will turn it back to you.
Well, thank you very much, Ira. Definitely looking forward to that third webinar, and of course, finding everything else out, all the secrets you're holding back on the InsureFest in October. But I'd like to remind everybody, we're going to open it up for questions now. So if you haven't already done so, please submit your questions in writing to the right-hand navigation area of our go-to meetings. We've got several questions coming in, and the first question, great question. So as a sales manager, how do I get more of the seasoned producers involved in this prospecting process?
Well, I think one of the things to do to get seasoned producers involved is, one, that you say as an agency, we're going to do this one day a quarter. And if a prospecting day is done one day a quarter, from 8:30 to 4:30, it's about 6 hours of calling once a quarter. That's 24 hours for the year, or 1.1% of full-time hours for a year. And I don't care how big your book is, anybody who wants to carry a producer title or call themselves a salesperson ought to be able to give up 1.1% of their working hours to reach out to people who they don't already have business with, to try and put some new prospects in the pipeline. Secondly, I think you want to lobby those veteran producers that you need them as leaders in the agency to model the desired behavior for young producers and to kind of set the standards. And I will just say that when everything's tracked and measured in prospecting days, you can set up some great competitions between internal teams, veterans versus newbies, boys versus girls. I mean, if there are some natural teams, there's a lot of different ways to do it. And if you're non-competing agencies, even different agencies could jointly do a prospecting day if you're in different parts of the state or aren't competing with one another. So anyhow, those are some of the things that we found can help.
Great. Okay, so the next question here, it looks as though this person may be in a position of the one who's actually setting the appointment. So it says, I've secured many appointments or phone appointments for the producer, and with very little follow-up. How do I get the producer to follow through on their end?
I think that's a great question as well. So, and I may have to ask for clarification. So whoever asks a question, if I've understood the question the wrong way, please do let me know. I think what you're saying, if I'm hearing the question right, is the producer makes an initial contact, but then nothing happens after that first meeting with the prospect. Brian, does that sound, is that on track with what you think is being asked?
I think so, and maybe a little further to the conversation would be maybe that accountability between someone whose role maybe is to just set the appointments for producers, and maybe they're the ones making the initial contact.
Yeah, I'd say when somebody is just making the appointment for producers, one of the things you might do is to, again, if you're asking for a different kind of meeting, one of the things you might want to do is to help them prepare and think about what they might ask during the meeting. I'm surprised at how many producers struggle with, other than traditional insurance or benefits questions, what would I ask about a business to get a customer engaged in talking, and what would be relevant to ask about a business that ties back to our products, services, and solutions. So maybe, one, you can take some barriers down to that accountability by working with the producer to help them come up with the questions. But I think also setting up a debrief, or maybe building it into sales meetings where people need to come back and actually come back and actually report and share the notes from their from these initial meetings and what they've actually learned during the meetings. That might be a good way to do things as well. And then I think additionally that you know, as salespeople, we're always looking for a next step. And I think, you know, great meetings are nice, but it's always what do we do next? And if you use the approach to selling we're talking about, you're always either reaching out to get additional information to have another research or discovery kind of meeting, or you say we know enough already, now's the time to book the appointment and get in front of the decision maker. And there are some strategies for how you might do that. So anyhow, I hope that's helpful.
Very good. And it looks like we've got time for maybe one more question. I want to remind everyone, if we don't have time to get you the question today or you've got additional questions for Ira, his contact information can be found on our website. So one last question for you. What is the best way to prepare your prospect list to ensure the most productive prospecting event possible?
Yeah, you know, we often talk about 3 power factors in account qualification, and I hope folks will write them down. And they're quality of coaching, quality of information, and strength of gatekeeper. And quality of coaching just means that we have somebody who is close to that organization who's likely to, who is already a coach for us, or likely because of the personal or professional relationship we have, likely to be a coach. So we always, where you know somebody or have a warmer contact, you move those to the front of the queue because those are going to be easier calls to make because it's a warmer call, not entirely cold. Second of all, quality of information. If you look at the website, so what's publicly available on 100 companies, you'll find a whole range, everything from just a placeholder, you know, that's one page and really has no content behind it, no names, no phone numbers, and you're going to find other very rich websites that are very detailed about what the company does and include the name, title, and direct phone number of everybody who works there. It is much, much easier to call on an organization where you have names and contact information of individuals, or if you don't have those, where you have a lot more detail about what the business does for a living. So I look for quality of coaching, warmer connections first, after that more information, names and titles and numbers of people to call, or at least more detail about the business. And then strength of gatekeeper just means if there's nobody already blocking you, again, those go forward versus organizations that every time you try and reach them, everybody is blocking you. And then what you do, so it's quality of coaching, warm contacts first, good information second, no blocking right after that. Then you just reach out to people using the prospecting approach that we talked about today. And if people will give you a meeting, a prospecting appointment, then your quality of coaching goes up, your quality of information goes up, your strength of gatekeeper stays low, you move them forward. If they won't accept the meeting, the strength of gatekeeper is high, quality of information stays lower, and coaching goes lower, so you move them to the back of the queue. I hope that helps.
Well, that's definitely great. Thank you so much, Ira. And once again, we're really looking forward to having this webinar 3. So everybody, please go ahead and get some information, sign up for that one. So let's go ahead and then wrap this up. I want to thank you, Ira, for spending some time with us today and providing us with your insight. If you'd like to hear more from Ira on how to grow agency sales, he will present one final webinar, like I said, and that information is free to all IIAB Cal members, and that will be on August 6th at 10 a.m. And to register for that webinar or to download the recorded version of today's webinar, visit www.insurefest.org. That's www.insurefest.org, and click on the InsureFest Sales Track Webinar Sales link. And in addition, like we said, Ira will be a presenter at this year's InsureFest, and that's October 24th through the 26th at the Las Palmas Resort and Spa in Rancho Mirage. And for more information, go to that same website, www.insurefest.org. And once again, thank you, Ira, and that will conclude our webinar today. Have a great day, folks.